Hey guys, welcome to the Blue Collar Business Podcast, where we discuss the realest, rawest, most relevant stories and strategies behind building every corner of a blue collar business. I'm your host, Cy Kirby, and I want to help you. What it took me, trial and error, and a whole lot of money to learn. The information that no one in this industry is willing to share. Whether you're under that shade tree or have your hard hat on, let's expand your toolbox. Guys, welcome back to another episode of the Blue Collar Business Podcast, brought to you and sponsored by our brand new sponsor, Thumbtack. Guys, tired of spending all your time searching through the weak leads instead of getting actual work done? Thumbtack brings you work you're ready to win. You get visibility, automation to run your business without headaches, plus the flexibility to scale across crews and different markets. You'll always know where your money's going and what it can deliver. The success of pros on Thumbtack says it all. Want to grow smarter? Visit thumbtack.com/pro today to book your one-on-one strategy session. Use Blue Collar 10 to tell them that you're coming. Guys, today I have got such a cool individual to bring to the show who has been in corporate America and seen the very tippy top of that world. Let's put it that way. It can be a good world. It can be a bad world. And he's seen both sides of it. So I'm interested to dive off in there, but he's also wrote some unbelievable books. And number one, that's very interesting to the show here, guys. And if you're watching on screen on YouTube or Spotify, I really appreciate you guys. But the trade gap, break the rules. He sent me a signed copy. I'm going to be steadily working my way through that. But he's an avid hunter, guys. And he's got another book called Turning Feral. And I'm really going to have to pick that one up too. But this gentleman knows everything that is there to know about the American dream, and diving off, and literally the white collar world kind of wrecked him. Jumped off in the trades, figured it out, picked up work, and I'm going to let him kind of take it from there. But introducing the one and only, thank you so much for joining me, Zach Hanson, the man, the myth, the legend.
I appreciate it, Cy. What a great introduction. You know, I love getting to go on podcasts, and intros are always quite varied, but that's definitely the most glowing, albeit accurate. I don't know. We'll let viewers decide afterwards, but I appreciate that.
Well, I just wanted to make sure I didn't miss anything, but a little bit about what we're going to be talking about today, guys, before we get too far off. This gentleman has spent some time in the AI world. So if that interests you, we're probably going to be jumping off into a little bit of hunting stories through this story, I could only imagine. But other than that, brother, kind of take us from number one, I guess you can tell us when the books came about in the intro story here, brother, but take us through the whole gambit.
Yeah. I'll try to do my most concise version so we can kind of go off into whatever tangent we want, but
you got all day, brother.
Well, good. You know, I was born late 80s, like a lot of people, full on millennial, grew up in, what I call perfectly middle class Southern Georgia, neighborhood. Parents both worked, went to school, the whole nine. But like many millennials, people around our age, in their 30s, 40s now, which is scary. I had college pushed down my throat. I can remember specifically early 90s, like it felt like everything was just great, right? I remember getting like birthday money from grandmom that was like more than I get now as an adult, right? But like I remember getting these things thinking, man, this is just easy. And I kept getting coached even from as early as I can remember, elementary, middle school, of if you just go to college, doesn't matter what you actually study, you are going to be better off for it and you're going to come out with a job. That's what was coached. All through high school, same thing. We had technical schools where I was at in South Carolina where I graduated high school. But as we kind of talked in the pre-show, similarly, whether it was true or not, we were coached that the dumb kids went to the technical schools. Like if you did not have some sort of academic penchant to you, you had to go to the technical school. So it was one of those things where I had it wasn't an economics teacher. Maybe it was. I had a high school teacher who on her desk had a hard hat and a fake college application. And in a bold letters under it, she had just the words, "you choose." Again, like painting that dichotomy of like one bad, one good, you know where you're going. Now, mind you, I was not a great student. I was I was a wrestler. I just wanted to do athletics, all that stuff. But it was college or bust. And that's what we came up on. So I'm going to jump from there, which is I went to college. I did my 3.5, 4 years, got out, worked for the government for a little while, realized that's not what I wanted to do. So I went back to school. And then I went back to school again. Why? Because when I had graduated, it was right during the recession. So all that gold, that pot of gold at the end of that college rainbow I was promised just didn't exist. Period. Poof. Gone. Nothing. I was scrambling, fighting, gnawing, whatever to try to get a job, and I couldn't. Not an entry-level job. So like other people, I just kept adding on the debt, got master's degrees, did the whole nine, and then eventually, 7, 8 years after graduating high school, now with a great pile of debt, I was able to finally land a job at IBM, which was great, but for like $40K a year. I knew guys in high school who had, graduated, went straight into the trades and were making like $70K year one. And then they did that for 7 years. So I felt behind. But, that's the shortest version of like this whole story and how it kind of started.
Man.
And I think it's one that a lot of people resonate with.
Literally, man, we've had, I can think of 3 or 4 right off the top of my head here that have been in white collar America. One that sticks out to me right off the bat, jumped all the way down to landscaping. And previous episode, he was sitting here talking about how he ended up mowing for the guy that fired him in corporate America, his neighbor. That doesn't necessarily resonate with me as much because I literally just straight up said no to college because, dude, I felt the same exact way from 8th grade on. It was, and so I'm a little different. I didn't get to the country, obviously, until 7th grade. Half of the semester of 6th grade, I was just trying to figure out what this world was down here. But 7th grade's kind of when I really started. But every single day, I didn't even know what college was. We called it university. And then I figured out there was a difference anyways. But it was just pound this college-bound mentality into your head. And if you didn't get it, it wasn't they were calling you dumb or stupid. They were just insinuating that you were. And at that time, so I graduated high school in 2009. So I was coming out at the exact same time into the world where, there should be a plethora amount of jobs and there was development sitting still. And so I was kind of fighting the same fight, and I ended up landing at a municipality after doing some various odd end jobs. But dude, that little millennial gap was pretty rough that people don't even remember. But what was your degree in, number one? I'm sorry. I don't know if you highlighted that.
Man, it was, a hyper valuable degree in political science.
Understood. And I'm like, I was everybody coming out with a business degree there's still utilization in the marketplace for that, but it's just, yes, it's stated and needed on there, but if there's also experience that can outweigh that education, eventually you get up in exec world that you've got to have an education. I totally get it. I'm not saying it's not needed, but man, bro, that's absolutely, brutal from the high schooler perspective that doesn't even remember what he ate for breakfast yesterday, when's football practice or when's hockey practice. I got you there, but I don't care. I just wanted to go hang out on the weekends. And so to not even offer that group of kids shop class, number one, by the time I got into high school, I was so excited. I've heard, from every grandpa, uncle around here that I got introduced, shop class, you've heard about it. And by the time I got there, I'm like, where's this shop class? What's it called? And it wasn't there. I mean, FFA I was in, they wouldn't let us put a greenhouse. That's all changed since now, but it was pretty rough to see. I was just trying to get some type of involvement other than college because I wasn't going to kind of do what they told me.
Well,
You know what I mean?
exactly. I mean, so you came at it from the angle that you had your mind made up and you wished you'd had exposure to, say, woodworking class or metal shop. Similarly, I had no shops in my class either. And we were kind of like a rural urban school in South Carolina, but there was none. They don't exist anymore. So I'm not saying that had that been there, that might have changed my mind. Like, I feel like I was too far down the path of having it shoved down my throat, but maybe I still had no exposure to it. And, to tie it back, so part of the book, The Trade Gap, so it's kind of broken up into a couple of sections, but the very beginning of it is all about the vocational education in the U.S., starting from 1917 up until when you and I were graduating high school. And the arc is, we started off very much investing in initially agricultural education, right? And then as the Industrial Revolution took off, we started to invest more in people learning trades, welding, whatever. And we built America. And it kind of peaked in 1960, where if you talk to anybody who was, a Gen X or a boomer, all of them had woodworking. All of them had shop class. You talk to my dad, you talk to my granddad, who was in his 90s, like they were working in high school. They were actually learning how to do stuff and build stuff. And that was part of the curriculum because there was an expectation that whether they went white collar or not, they needed to keep up with their homes. They needed to provide for their family. Just basic self-reliance was what they were teaching. And then in 1983, this is an interesting thing, there was a paper called A Nation at Risk, written by the Education Commission of something or other in the U.S., which was pretty much saying China's going to beat us because they're investing in all the STEM activities of math, science, computers, whatnot. And so by the time that paper hit, the federally, they started to redirect, funds for vocational education towards STEM. So by the time I was entering elementary school in the early 90s, there was no shop, but we did have computer class, which was great. Like we learned computer literacy. We got to play Oregon Trail and learn what dysentery was.
Hey, come on, shout out.
Yeah. So, but we all had that experience. And so many high schools just eventually, by the time the No Child Left Behind Act came in the early 2000s, teachers were incentivized by SAT and college acceptance rates. So shop class gone, woodworking class gone. Overall, you talk to some people and there were pockets in rural areas that kept them, of course, but overall they disappeared from the U.S. education system. And that's when you and I came about. It just didn't exist, period.
It's kind of, man, what I know now, and I preach it all the time on this show, at least go spend a summer with a plumber or an electrician and get out there on the job and talk to those guys. Yeah, they're supporting their families, and you'll look at them and you'll be like, how do these guys, get a job done? And then you work around them all day and you're like, wow, dude, we just wired an entire whole house and put the panel together. And it's kind of crazy. Like, what did I do all day, But I encourage just straight out of high school or even during high school, spend the summer. If, the company's insurance allows, that can always be a thing. But man, apprenticeships and those internships, I guess they would call them before you start your apprenticeship, find out a trade that you're at least curious about. And the other thing I say is, man, you may not love a certain trade, but you may be really good at that trade. And you can elevate yourself into a position of salary or managerial. I mean, you can manage people very quickly if you become very skilled at that trade. But always I reference back to the plumbing and electrical worlds because they have that, apprentice, journeyman's in that 2-year slot. And then you can have a master's license if you really buckle down and focus in 4 years. That's major money anywhere at any place in the country. To have that, what you're fixing to get into, I would love to talk about, number one, how you got into AI, but literally when you were looking for a job after having all this experience and the degree and all the accolades, you ended up coming back to the trades and then picking that up, and boom, you can go anywhere in the country and make money with that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So go ahead.
It's the way that I think about it. It's a bit of a hedge, right? It's a hedge against what's coming. And, the book has two arguments just to kind of set this up a little bit. One, I would love for it to be impactful for young high school students to kind of think about college. It's kind of like a cautionary tale because it's a lot of history, but it's also kind of rooted around my own experience, which again, I don't want to misrepresent. Like I became very successful in the white collar world, made a lot of money, and it was great. But it was tooth and nail fighting to get that role on the heels of a lot of debt that I had to pay off in order to get there. So that's one. But I want it to be a position for kids to think about. There are other opportunities out there. And it's not the dumb kids that go into the trades. And the second piece is existing white collar workers. Like, you hear a lot, go learn a trade, get into trades. But like the reality is like, with the money that I make right now in my white collar job, I will not step away. It makes no logical sense for me to step away and be an electrician apprentice. It doesn't. For my family, I just can't afford to do that. However, you can start to build skills. And that's the argument. It's like we should all be building some level of base skills. Give you an example. When I did lose my job, and we can talk about that in a little bit too. I did lose my white collar job at one point, and I had an extended period of unemployment. I was very fortunate that in that time that I was unemployed, I had built some skills on the side. I had become a trapper, so I was able to do government trapping. I was trapping wolves. I was doing live marten studies. I was doing a bunch of wild stuff to pay our mortgages and kind of taxidermy. So my view of trades is actually quite wider than like plumber, electrician, welder. Like it of course includes those, but that could be, drone pilot, knitting sweaters and selling them. It could be trapping. It could be whatever you want it to be that is a skill that has some market tied to it. It might not be the most lucrative market. Trust me, selling fur is not the most lucrative market in the world, but it can pay bills. And I luckily had those things when that time came. So my argument for the people who are employed in this knowledge working sphere, that is, I'm not even going to say inevitably, it is being impacted by AI. It is impacting, the need for people to be in certain roles, punching keys on a keyboard. You've got AI that can do that and do it better than you in a lot of instances. So it is to learn skills on the side, which is a hard thing. Like go to night welding school and pick up a cert. And worst case, you build a smoker for yourself. Best case, you have something to fall back on. Same with like, I'm getting my journeyman's license now. In Idaho, that's a 4-year process, 4 years of school, 4 years of full-time apprenticeship. So for me, that timetable is extended. I'm doing my night school on top of my day job, and I'm getting hours here and there, which means it'll probably take me 8 years to do it, but that's okay. I can take that long road, and it's a hedge. And worst case, now I can fix stuff in my house, and I don't have to call somebody every time. Sometimes you do, but you're learning things. So those are the two arguments setting up in the book, is for the young kids and for knowledge workers to just start learning skills. Like you don't have to be a full-time tradesman, but we all become better people by learning these things.
Dude, spot on. And that should be, to you younger, hopefully graduating seniors, maybe in college yourself right now, like the time to learn and be an apprentice is, when you're trying to figure out life and you don't have a mortgage and you don't have the family, like where it's really hard to make that career change. And respect to anybody that has at any point in your life, it can be done. But when you're first coming out of high school, man, by the time you're 22, 25 years old, you can be making some serious jack from any type of skill that you acquire by going and working at a company that already does said skill. They will teach you, you know what I mean, without acquiring any debt. And you're already starting to stack. So, but to commend you, man. Like as soon as I heard AI and how long you've been involved in it, I'm like, man, who better to know about what is coming? You know, I privy on this show all the time, like the existing white collar worker, like start learning skills now. And if you haven't been, you're kind of behind, because I'd love you to touch on AI and kind of what you have seen already, because man, like I said, I gave you my knowledge base. I'm trying to challenge myself every single day to hop on challenge Chat GPT or Grok, and not just, hey, build this Excel, like really challenge myself to embrace it a little bit. Because as I said before, yeah, there's guys out there that are like, nah, dude, that's, you know, whatever excuse they want to give you about not wanting to embrace it. But like the guys that don't, they're already going to be behind by the time we get there. So I'm trying to challenge myself. We're not really utilizing it within the company yet anywhere, but I'd say that on our CRM. But man, talk a little bit about your knowledge base on AI and kind of what you think for that white collar existing worker.
Well, it's interesting. So, you know, from a mathematical perspective, AI has been around really at the forefront since the 1950s. Like the understanding of the math behind it is not new, is not novel. However, the compute, you know, think of the actual, you know, hardware to run an algorithm to produce a result with AI has been only really recently cultivated in a way that is economical, sort of, and, you know, fast enough. So the math has been there for a long time. There's actually a great book called Weapons of Math Destruction, which talks a lot about AI and, you know, kind of the future of it. And it's one that I always recommend to people who are interested in AI and kind of where it's going and where it's been and started and where it is now. Also, great title. And the net is like, I got into it in the mid 2000s. I kind of fell into it, right? I had my general education degree. I ended up finally bullying my way into a non-AI related role at IBM. Kind of found out about AI and talked to some people there working on it. And similarly, I'm just like a dog with a bone in a lot of instances. And I worked my way into a role there. And that's when the veil came back. And, you know, frankly, a lot of it's duct tape and paper clips, like anything else. You know, there's a lot of smart people doing a lot of really cool things, but like the business application side of it, which is what I was working on for a long time, was, you know, the ROI wasn't there. You know, it was either really expensive to run, you know, finding the right applications for it were difficult. And then you fast forward to like 2-3 years ago with OpenAI starting to build out ChatGPT and some of these large language models. You know, it's impressive how fast things have moved in the last 3 years. And I am definitely not the Paul Revere of the singularity saying, you know, hey, William, get your cabin out in Idaho, even though I have that, you know, get ready because it's coming. But it's just been this slow march for a long time that is now on a hyper speed scale. And what I'm now seeing is all those business applications we thought would be great for AI are now economically viable and are happening, which means a lot of the people that were doing a lot of database administration, you know, that is something that can be automated. A lot of you hear about legal and law. A lot of that is rote research of very big volumes of documentation. Great use case for AI. You know, that is stuff that can be kind of pushed off to a computer system. Similarly, like even in my day job working in AI as a product manager, like a lot of what we're doing is building requirements documents for software applications. That's pretty easy to like hop off to like ChatGPT, Grok, Claude, or any of these LLMs to get pretty close to the pin, right? And what I'm seeing now is there are so many organizations who have roles, and I won't name like specific roles, but you can think about what they might be, that have hundreds of people to do this stuff. And now if you look at it objectively, you know, you can maybe do it with a quarter of the amount of people that you're dealing with. When you let your people use these tools, they become way more efficient. They become way more productive, frankly. And with that, if you look at it from like an objective board member perspective or a CEO's perspective, it's like, okay, do we keep people on the payroll for charity? Or do we give a smaller subset of really high performers those tools and let them do the work of the other 80%? And you know where the answer is going to eventually fall. And that's where my stance is. Like, it's coming and it's happening, and we're seeing it. Meta, all the big FANG companies like Amazon, Google, like you see layoffs all the time. And a lot of it's now like eating into like software engineers, like you have these AI code assistants now where you can hire junior devs and they can do as good a job as a senior developer in a lot of instances, not always. But it's just reshaping in front of our eyes the way that we think of organizational buildup in a company, whether that's a software company, hardware company, or even construction. Like, it's just changing the way that we do things administratively.
Dude, spot on. And that's so crazy to hear that that we've had the math to do it, but it's the language models, like getting off into that. That's the absolute 30,000 foot airplane over my head. You know what I mean?
Well, I'll put it this way too, to tie it back into trade. So like where we're at in Idaho, we have a lot of desert below us. We are building so many data centers that require welders, high level electricians. Like, we have Micron here in Boise building chips, and they can't hire enough tradespeople to keep up with the demand because the energy consumption of these machines to run these models is insane. And I have to remember the stat. I need to like tattoo it on my forearm so I don't forget, because I always do. But for every like chat GPT prompt that you run, you're on your phone. You talked about like starting to use it daily. Every time you press that little arrow button and say, hey, build me a great breakfast this morning, Chat GPT. I have eggs, some cereal, and whatever, and it's going to whip you up something fantastic. Like, I don't know how many kilowatts of energy that consumes, but it's an absurd amount.
Really? Yeah. I mean, we've seen the giant data centers. Obviously, everybody has. And my brain I don't understand why it takes so much power or so much data. Obviously, that's probably beyond my compensation of my mind. But at the same time, like, I'm seeing it just on, YouTube shorts and reels. You're seeing these massive data centers that they're moving massive amounts of material to stand up these ginormous structures, and very rapidly. And that's the other thing that I was going to get into, is that, we've had this math for this very long, forever, but now we've really opened it up with OpenAI. But the last 3 years, I'm watching it just on the outside, and I don't know anything. And it looks like it's going way faster than everybody thought it was going to. And from some of the large retailers we have around here, they have a lot of administrative base in the area, and I'm hearing that they're training a lot of AI models, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so scary. These people, have worked here a very, very, very long time, and it's, there's an annual layoff, and that can, of course, hurt and detriment people. But with AI being sprinkled in the case, I could only, hopefully they don't do it ever, but I could only imagine what's coming. You know what I mean? But I don't think anybody, even probably the guys that have been in the field for a decade, probably thought it was going to go this fast.
No, you're right. It is happening way faster than people think. Now, I do have a theory personally where I do think there might be a little bit of a slowdown, but it's from an economic perspective. So right now, these companies like OpenAI, Claude, Google, a lot of them are heavily subsidized by private equity companies, meaning that right now it's cheap. Like you pay what, $20 a month for your ChatGPT license?
Yes, sir.
Similar to like these big companies who are now letting their actual workers leverage ChatGPT, they're paying maybe $50 a license per person per month. That's not a lot of money for the productivity gains that they're getting, right? So if you remember back when Uber started, Uber was highly subsidized by private equity, meaning the private equity companies were buying into Uber, investing millions and millions of dollars, maybe billion, I don't know how many, but a lot of money, so that they could operate at almost zero cost to the user. Why? It's like selling drugs. So when Uber came out, like, I don't know if you remember, but you could get a ride across town to like the airport or wherever for $3. And you're like, okay, this is worth it. I'll download this thing. There's no upfront cost, $3 for a ride. And then what's happened over the years? Well, eventually those private equity companies want their money out of it. So then what happens to the pricing model? It goes up. All of a sudden you're paying $5 a ride. And you're like, that's not that bad. I'll sell my car even because now I'm in a city. I don't need my car. I've got Uber. But now if you're like me, like when I am in Boise and I have to go to the airport and we live, mind you, 7 miles away, 15-minute drive, no less than $35 to get there.
God.
Right? And then you don't factor in the surge pricing, or you think of a giant metropolitan area, it's absurdly expensive. So my theory, the same is going to happen with ChatGPT. So these licenses that are now only costing a company $50 a month per person per seat, whatever that is, what do you think they're going to do? They're going to start looking at that and saying, okay, well, if we just replace somebody who's making $150,000 salary for $50 a month, I think we should be charging $100,000 for that license. And then, you net that 30 or whatever that productivity is. So my guess is that price to actually leverage these tools, just like Uber, is going to incrementally grow. But, once Sai's gotten pretty addicted to his ChatGPT to like whip his breakfast up, how far are you going to start climbing that ladder of paying that extra monthly thing? You'll probably do it up to a point, but the VCs and the equity people are going to want, or private equity people are going to want their money out eventually. And the cost is going to go up because they're subsidizing it right now.
Man, they just, for you guys out there, that may be sitting at that desk and listening to this podcast and going, I've thought about jumping off into the trades, maybe talk a little bit about that nightly welding school, just a little bit, if you don't mind. And did you do that out in Idaho when you got out there?
Yep.
And kind of give us a little background. I mean, we've you've been in the boardrooms, it sounds like, many a time, but now you're in a much different environment. And, the book is a lot of basis points is about being self-reliant and being self-sufficient, and kind of take us off. I'm excited to hear a little bit about trapping wolves, honestly. So, man.
Yeah, I'll dive in. So my background, like I mentioned, I went to college, did all the things, bullied my way into a white collar job. Finally started succeeding at that white collar job, kind of growing in my different roles within the AI space. Started to build out with my now ex-wife what I call the white picket fence life. We were, she is an ex-FBI special agent. So we were in Louisiana, of all places. And I was flying in and out of New Orleans to DC to New York almost on a weekly basis. So we had built this nice house. We had the cars, we had all the things that we could want. All right. And it was success. But I felt like a dog who had caught up to a parked car he was chasing. And I was like, shit, what now? Like, this is it? And I remember sitting on a plane and I was watching Jeremiah Johnson. And I was like, this is one of my 5 a.m. flights to Washington, D.C. or New York. I don't remember. And I was like, what am I doing here? Like, what am I doing? And so at that point, I'd say I got hunt curious. I didn't grow up in a hunting family. I grew up in the South, so I was adjacent to it, but it just never kind of grabbed me. And my ex-wife and I were very into still jujitsu, and wrestling. So we were like very much into sports. So we kind of went from this angle of nutrition. So I was like, well, how can we optimize our nutrition? Her parents were from Middle Tennessee. They all hunted. And I was like, well, let's get some venison. And of course, we went back to her family one time for like a Christmas break. And I started kind of talking about it. And my father-in-law at the time, he's a great guy. He's like, I've got like a freezer full of that out there. Like, we take a couple deer every year. This is not some mystery. Like, you can go shoot a deer. Like, oh. So of course we took a bunch of meat back with us and it was really good. And I picked up a hand-me-down bow from a friend and kind of like started this track down to like wanting to bow hunt, and built a range in my like backyard and hooked an arrow in my neighbor's roof, did all the terrible things that you would expect somebody new to hunting to do that didn't have a lot of like mentorship and guidance. And, started down that path, then went through an unexpected divorce. And I was at this crossroads. I was like, you know what? Never really been out to the Rockies. I've been all over the world. I got in my car, grabbed my bow, grabbed the few things that I had to my name, and drove to Idaho. And ended up buying a cabin down an 80-mile dirt road. I was determined to go full Jeremiah Johnson. I'm like, I'm going to learn to do all of this stuff. So I started hunting elk, antelope. We have every critter you can trap out your back door. And I learned everything the hard way, which is like the story in Turning Feral. But started to pick up skills. But it was a utter, I don't know if you can cuss on this show, but
sure, bud.
It was a bitch slap because I had no skills. I went out to live in the woods in this cabin, and I really didn't even know how to change the oil in my car. Like, it was just absurd that I had been so guarded. I grew up in that world where I went and hunted at the grocery store. My expectation is if I went there, there's going to be food there and I can get it. I can just trade these little green things for food and life's easy. But out there, I'm 100 miles away from a Home Depot or a grocery store. I had to start preparing. Stuff in my cabin's breaking all the time, and I had to start learning. And thankfully, YouTube was amazing. Like, it's such a benefit. Chat GPT too now, but like, you just learn the hard way. I'd break a trailer, I'd have to fix it. And that kind of started me on this slow trickle towards building some skills. Like, still had my white collar day job. I was using Zoom, all that, but I was building some skills. I was learning the hard way. Now, fast forward, and I was the head of an AI company out of Boston, still living in Idaho, and I got laid off. And it was the first time I thought I was in this little gilded, like, protected circle. But as we talked about, it's just not true. These things happen. Layoffs happen. These restructures happen. Taking jobs happens. And ultimately, I was sitting there like, okay, I've got my little white picket fence manifest destiny. Everyone said, keep 6 months of savings. That'll get you through anything. 6 months went by. Couldn't find another job. 7 months went by. 8 months went by. So I'm not one to sit on my ass. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go to CWI, College of Western Idaho, go 2 nights a week welding school. Just learn how to do stick welding, all right? Just get like a structural welding cert. Did it. Loved it. And also started my electrical journeyman's license at the same time while I was trapping pretty much full time to pay our bills, and just started diving in. And, we kind of talked a little bit in the show earlier, but there were 2 guys that I knew from 2 separate jobs that were all kind of in like the database administration, very kind of specific tech job that ended up committing suicide. They weren't from my company or caught up in the same layoff, but they were in a series of layoffs in 23 that happened. And 2 of them put a gun in their mouth with family, kids, because they couldn't find a job and they didn't have anything to fall back on. They didn't have any other skills. And for whatever reason, they felt up against a wall that they couldn't reskill. They couldn't go back and learn to do something else, despite being very physically capable men. And I think a lot of people get caught in that trap, but that's the story. I went through this layoff and I was like, I need to double down on something that is not going to be replaced by AI, that even if I go back into a day job, which I have since then, like, it's a skill that doesn't deteriorate, right? Like, it takes continued effort and practice, but it won't go away. And now if I'm up against another layoff or an inevitable demise of a lot of the space that I'm working in, I have the confidence that I have some level of skill that will fetch some dollar amount on the free market that will be valuable and, ultimately put food in my kids' mouths.
I mean, worst case scenario, you got a journeyman's license. You could definitely hop on, thumbtack.com/pro and probably register on Thumbtack and get you a few ceiling fans to replace and a few things to bide the time. But that's exactly what we're talking about here, guys. Not to shamelessly plug that, but
it's
honest
a
to God,
perfect segue for it, though.
But it's exactly what we're talking about. I truly hope, this show is a resource for individuals in the blue collar working space and the entrepreneurial space, but it is also exactly for our guest today. Zach, I really appreciate you sharing the realism there, because it is real. Like, you spent 15 years up this career chain ladder at this one corporate place, and you believe that's where you're going to be the rest of your life, and they're going to take care of you. And then all of a sudden, bam, here comes a new full level of C-suites, full restructure, rebrand, and you're not a part of it. And what do? You were living your life dedicated to this company. And don't get me wrong, be loyal, be dedicated. But at the same time, you've got to be able to have a set of skills with your hands or your back or whatever it takes, whether it's setting tile. Maybe you enjoy that. My wife loves to set tile, and I hate to set tile, and I am terrible with my hands. Like, I can't hit a hammer and a nail together, but I can pick Copenhagen out of your teeth with a dadgum excavator. You know what I mean? So, like, just it's encouragement is what I'm trying to get at. If you're sitting there at your desk, listen to this pod, and you're like, man, dude, why can't I do that? You absolutely can, but don't quit your day job immediately. Pick up a nightly school. There's so many VOTEC schools out there now. Nightly, I mean, I know of one here. I'm actually involved with some high school programs, but there's adult education after hours specifically made for you guys. I need to probably get a few now that I'm sitting here having this. You've made me a little bit passionate about this subject specifically just for those two individuals, man. But literally, I need to, especially to you guys in the corporate world, wondering, what is this trade gap that we're speaking of? Well, to kind of throw this another course here, man, there is a large gap coming between those Gen X and the boomers that we were talking about. And statistically, thank God I have an oldest son. But honestly, is he really going to be wanting to be a dirt and utility pipe guy the rest of his life by the time he's able to run it, et cetera? Maybe his sisters will, who knows? But statistically right now, we're seeing it in the Gen X and the boomers. There's nobody there that they thought was going to take over. They've gone, the tech route, or they've gone like the actual technology route, not the VOTEC tech like we were just referencing, or they've, gone AI, and they've made a name for themselves, and they don't want to come back and take care of Larry's handyman business. But Larry built this, and his crews for his son to take over. And so son feels like, oh, I need to come back and help Larry. And, it's just a detrimental situation. Eventually it's going to pop. I'm just saying, man, we have got to bring more awareness. And so thank you so much for taking the time to put together hopefully, where can we get the books? Number one, obviously Amazon. I know that, but are you in airports? Because this needs to be in every stinking airport in the country.
No, we're going to work that way. That's the hope, right? So, but you can get it at Barnes and Noble, like online. You can really get it at any retailer online. You can look it up on Walmart.com, but you walk in your Walmart, you're not going to see it. So, we got to sell a lot more copies before they kind of talk about an antiquated industry, just the publishing industry in general. Like, you don't have a built-in audience. It's a difficult thing, but eventually, hopefully we'll get there where you can walk in your Barnes & Noble or wherever and find the book, or walk through the airport and see it at one of the Hudson bookstores. But until then, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Walmart.com, wherever you can kind of buy a book, you should be able to find it.
Fair enough. I wanted to give. And hey, if you guys are in the trapping space, You kept saying I learned the hard way. Man, I talk about it on this show all the time. That's literally why I do this show, is to talk about the hardships and the experiences we went through to get to where we're at. And I bring folks like Zach on this show to share his experience, to hopefully be encouragement as a resource that I couldn't go find a couple of years ago. And obviously every little bit of awareness we can bring on about, hey, what happens when the Gen X and boomers can't find anybody to give their business to? They're just going to throw up the towel. We're going to have less plumbers. We're going to have less trappers. We're going to have less, all of these skills that have been, I guess, just completely cut away from natural society out past your high school. And I was like you, man. I didn't come from a family of hunters. They went and hunted moose way up in Canada. That's one thing, but it wasn't like a South Georgia where it was deer season. I mean, you got the day off of school, I would assume, for opening, deer season. And South Arkansas is the same way, not so much here, but like it's a big dang deal. So you grow up around it. You want to be a part of it. You want to share those stories. So you find your way in and you hard nose your way in, and you did the same thing with trapping, but that's the blue collar way. That's exactly what we're talking about, guys. It's not like some thing you've got to acquire. You literally just need to show up with a smile. You can either go jump in some actual trade schools nightly as you keep that steady income protecting the family. I'm not telling anybody to just quit. You can, you absolutely can, but you probably got responsibilities to tend to. So just heed that warning. But you can absolutely start acquiring skills now to make a maneuver. You can maybe spend some time in an after hours school and maybe not make the jump to an electrician outfit as an apprentice. Maybe you can acquire your journeyman's license. You're eventually going to need some on-the-job training. Anyway, it's a totally different subject. But you know exactly where I was going. But man, I commend you so much. The immediate switch in your life and to just pick it up and start bringing awareness with these books is, and I haven't shout this out. I think I did in the intro, but host of the Okayest Trapper Podcast. I don't know if I highlighted that off the bat, brother. Apologies there. But man, I kind of finish out every show with one question. And the guy that has wrote a self-resilient book and your mindset, I was going to go off a little earlier about, the mindset going to Idaho, and maybe, you speak on that a little bit to the resiliency, because you talk about it so well in this book. Yes, I haven't read all of it, but I have read bits and pieces and the heavy points of the book, and just talk about the self-resiliency you've had through your walk, because I have a feeling this is going to help a lot of folks in your shoes.
Yeah. I mean, I'll touch on what you just spoke about prior to kind of diving into this question, because I think it is pertinent, right? You mentioned that you don't have to quit your job, especially if you're a knowledge worker. You want to protect your family, but you can build skills. You can go to night school, but that is not easy. That requires discipline, dedication, and a desire to do that. And I am not, as I've gotten older, I have realized that not everybody has that. So if you are not that person with a high ambition, if you are not that person with desire, you're not going to do it. You're not going to do it. But if you see the writing on the wall, whatever industry you're in, and you want to upskill, and that could be forcing yourself to use ChatGPT every day. It's not swinging a hammer, but it's still discipline to learn something new. Same with people who want to learn skills because they're not going to have a plumber to call. You have to do it. It is not going to be easy. It is going to be extra time away from you, your family, and it's going to suck. But there's an upside. There's a hedge. There's an ability to gain intellectual stimulation from learning something new. I learned more striking an arc and laying a bead than I did studying Kant in a philosophy class in college, or at least as much, truly. And you can pick those things up. So to answer your question about like self-reliance, I was lucky in that I was in sports. I got my self-reliance, I got my mindset through sports, specifically wrestling, high school, and I've done competitive jiu-jitsu for a long time. Always worked out. Like we work out every day. I was at jiu-jitsu earlier today, and you eat humble pie every day. You just get beat up, no matter how great you are, how long you've done it. There's going to be someone better than you that just rubs your face in a mat and just makes your day crap until you get up and you're done. And you're like, okay, that wasn't that bad. But building that kind of mindset of just like, get it done. I write books. I'm making tens of dollars off these books. Little plug there. Like, you don't make a lot of money on these things, but you still have to get up. You have to write them. You have to go through the whole experience to publish a book, and it's hard. But all these things start to accumulate. If you learn one little skill and you dedicate yourself to it, you're going to want to learn another little skill. And you start to pile up these little wins, and you build this resilience to start trying things and not being afraid of failure. I can't tell you the number of things that I failed miserably at. And it's every single thing that I'm now decent at, I have failed at. And I think that fear of failure holds so many people back, especially when you might be a soft-palmed, white-collar worker. And just like jiu-jitsu or anything else, like, there's a stigma about those people that are doing it. If you're a 40-year-old man walking into a jiu-jitsu gym for the first time in your life and you've never been in a fight, I commend you. Because you walk in there, you see grizzled people with our cauliflower ear, ready to grab you. Like, it's scary. And same, when I first met my welding teacher, I felt so inadequate. I'm like, I literally have no idea how any of this works. It's emasculating. The first time I had to ask someone to help me like change my oil as a 29-year-old. Emasculating. But you have to do it. You have to not have that fear in order to build that self-reliance muscle. And that's what it boils down to. And thankfully I had it in sports and it kind of wrote it out, but it took practice and failure and being okay with failing at every single thing you do.
Literally. And on that note, dude, my new skill, you may be looking at me and going, well, Cy, what are you doing? Guys, I'm a dirt and pipe guy. I didn't plan on being a podcast host. I didn't plan on having this YouTube. I make tens of dollars. I'm with you, buddy. Like, we don't do this, one day. Yeah, of course we're getting there, but we're just investing in ourselves, right? And investing in our teams and what we believe is a resource along the way. And that's what I think is so cool. But it was terrifying uploading YouTube videos that I put together. But I knew I had to start somewhere. And the largest project we ever landed, I had 79 subscribers. And it was because of our YouTube channel. That was someone so close to our family that passed our shop every day, had control of that contract. Like, all I had to do was put myself out there. And so, of course, I, had a little bit of quick success with the podcast and the YouTube subscribers, and we felt the love. And I'm like, man, let's keep this thing going. But man, as you know, sir, it gets grindy very quickly, and those quick hits of success, it's almost like gambling, because you want to keep it going, but you're gambling with your energy, your own body's energy. You have this other thing that supports your family, that keeps it going, but you have this, new skill you're trying to acquire. For me, guys, it's stepping into this digital space. DERF to digital is kind of what I say. I didn't think I would end up being a podcast host. It started in my kitchen, interviewing a couple of folks around town to bring awareness about, number one, our industry issues, and that nobody wants to talk about as the boomers and Gen Xers are phasing out. Like, we've got to start bringing this stuff up, or we're just going to acquire the same crappy industry standards. So somebody's got to do it. So then, I've had a lot of encouragement along the way. Thankful for sponsors like Thumbtack. But at the same time, man, it's an absolute grind. No algorithm likes you if you're inconsistent. You've got to be consistent in videos or posts or videos within those posts or whatever kind of platform you're on. So it's been super unnatural for me to climb behind this camera, speak to a guest that I probably never met before other than some email exchange and maybe a 10-minute phone call beforehand. Like it's completely unnatural now for me to go dig 3,000 foot of water line in. I could put earbuds in and nobody'd ever have to hear from me again. Like I'm good, guys. You know what I mean? But I knew if I wanted to bring the right set of eyeballs into my space, I've got to go out there and show them what I'm capable of. And the only way I could do that was through this digital space. I was terrified, brother. I still am. I still get the butterflies. I get butterflies, and I have, of course, anything with the internet comes with the hate, right? But it kind of fuels me a little bit at this point. Like, why are you hating? Because we're doing something. We're affecting people, and the good outweighs the bad every single time. But no, the grind of learning that skill, where I was taking all of this, guys, but it is an incredible emotional, mental battle during that, working your 40, 50, 60 hours a week, whether you're an entrepreneur, you're working 70, 80. And then, I get this question all the time. Well, so how do you have time? Well, you don't. You just freaking make it. You get up early. Yeah, you've got a family at home too, so you got to make some non-negotiable time there for them. So, it's all about prioritizing and time management to acquire these new skills, but it can be done. But you're absolutely spot on, Zach, with if you don't have that ambition to be better or wanting to take another route, there's nobody that's going to come and save you. Like, you've got to want it to do it for yourself. And it is going to be brutal. It's going to suck. You're going to be hungry because you skipped lunch or you skipped dinner just to make a class or make it to that second job. I mean, a lot of these electrician guys, they'll pick you up for an afternoon if you get off at 3:00. If they've got 3 hours worth of work, running row or whoever, plumbers or whatever it is. Now, probably not in the middle of summer in South Georgia or South Arkansas or anywhere over here in the southeastern United States. We try to be back in the van and gone home by 1 or 2 o'clock before it hits 120. But I just encourage you guys, from Zach's story, man, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you putting things out there into the world to bring awareness and just consideration of, oh man, maybe the trades could be the thing. And the thing about what I love about this show is that we get to bring two total opposite ends of the spectrum perspectives to this. Sit here and have a conversation about the same, tradey thing. And we're like, man, like we have so much in common, but we came from two completely opposite ends of the spectrum. So
I like to think of it real quick as like a Venn diagram, right? It's like you have two circles and there's like an overlap. And right now, you've got people on one side who are just born to swing a hammer. They're never going to want to do the business side. They're never going to want to do the social side like you're doing. The other end of that spectrum, you've got some really, we'll say it, dorky PhD types who will never swing a hammer. But then if you look at the overlap, you learn the trades, but you are ambitious and you recognize that there's value in AI. You recognize there's value in expanding the story to close that gap that we're seeing with the boomers and Gen Xers that are leaving the trades and this huge gap that we've talked about. And then you're up leveling. Similarly, there's people like me in there that are knowledge workers that are also in that overlap who are saying, I can actually learn some skills. And I think when those things start to marry in that kind of center part of that Venn diagram, we're going to see a lot of really interesting businesses come out of that.
Dude, that's a thought I didn't even think of, but no, that is a great visual picture for you're absolutely right. And we need more people willing to step from the right side and the left side into the middle. But we also, as employers and upper level management, we also have to understand that we're not training the same generations, right? So we've got to be adaptable. Video training does go a long way. Like, I'm literally a dirt and pipe guy, and we've got, 10, 15 videos now that, hey, these are the 10, 15 videos on this private playlist that you need to watch before you step foot into a truck and into the job because of experiences we've had. But like, I can go off on a whole different sector there, but Blue Collar Performance Marketing's passion is to bring attention to the honest work done in blue-collar industries through effective, results-driven marketing tactics. They specialize in comprehensive digital marketing services from paid advertising on Google and Facebook to website development and content strategy. I started working with Ike and the team earlier this year, and they've had a huge impact on our specific marketing campaign and trajectory of our overall company. Their expertise in digital ad management, website development, social media, and overall marketing strategy has been an absolute game changer for our sales and marketing at Sycon. If you're looking to work with a marketing team who does what they say, does it well, and is always looking for ways to help your company grow, book a discovery call with Ike by going to bcperformancemarketing.com/BCB podcast or click the link in the show notes /description below. Thanks, guys. Literally, man, the time has been valuable. I got one last question, and I don't think there's a better guest to ask, man, but I ask everybody on the show, what's that takeaway for now that you've had some major blue collar experience, but for that blue collar worker who is just sick and tired of being stuck in the mud, my guy, mentally, emotionally, physically, as you know, it takes a toll on your body, literally getting up and doing these 12, 14, 16-hour days around the clock. Man, what's your answer, brother?
I don't know if I have a straight answer, but find a great support system. Like everything revolves around the spouse for me, man. Like you talked about non-negotiables. My wife is my biggest support system. Like whether you're tired of being stuck in the mud and you want to take a little bit of time to do an online course at night to learn about ChatGPT, fantastic. But it's going to take the support of your wife and your family and your support system to do it. And it goes both ways for the knowledge worker to think about getting in the dirt. You're going to need a support system. So have those conversations with your significant other early and often. Express that you either have discontent or you have an ambition that you think there's something more out there. Because if you just keep it to yourself and then you start taking action, things are going to fall apart. Bring your spouse along for the journey. That's my only real piece of advice.
Brother, that's right in line with what we just came off of. We did this 4-part mini series with me and my wonderful wife. We sat down and we talked about some hard subjects. My guys, she put me in the hot seat, dude. I wasn't quite ready for a lot of that stuff, but we need to bring awareness to the support level because, she claps so hard and loud for me. I really don't hear anybody else clapping, and that's it's all about, great man, great woman, but there's a great woman always beside that great man, propping him up when he needs propped up. And when we get completely checked out, all 3 categories, she's the one that goes, hey, you got this. This is why we started and this is where we're going. And that little reminder, but you're absolutely right. She has to deal with those sacrifices too. Keep that in mind. Or vice versa, ladies, you're trying to learn a new skill. I'm not discounting you guys. Husband needs to just talk with each other, man. Just like your point, just open up. Hey, I think there's more to life than this. Or, hey, I'm thinking about this. They may be already sitting there thinking about, but you guys are so busy just freaking trying to survive and do life together that, God forbid you let each other down in some way or another just to have a moment of vulnerability and go, I know this sounds crazy, but what if it works?
100%.
So, guys, please go check out The Trade Gap. I have got me a wonderful copy. If you guys don't follow me on LinkedIn, I will be getting a LinkedIn post when I'm done with this and get you guys a full review because, as you guys know, unbelievably passionate about what we speak about on this show all the time. Where can they come find you, Zach?
Yeah, so LinkedIn as well, Zachary Hanson. But, I also have an Instagram. It's at Let Me Die Learning. That's where you can kind of follow stuff for the Okayest Trapper podcast. You can see some of my hunting, trapping content, see stuff about the trade gap, see turning feral stuff. So Let Me Die Learning on Instagram and then Zach Hanson on LinkedIn.
And of course, the Okayest podcast. Is there a website for that or is it on normal? everywhere.
You find it on Spotify. So it is the Okayest Trapper, is part of the Okayest Hunter network out of Wisconsin. There's a bunch of great podcasts kind of under that same network. I run the trapping one. Spotify, YouTube, the whole nine.
Man, if you guys have loved this, I really appreciate your time spent with us this afternoon, learning just another key insight. Every single time I sit down on this show, I get to sit here and learn another insight of another perspective that I didn't know. And just, man, I appreciate you being willing to bring awareness to this subject and continually challenging yourself to learn and be better, man. You're inspiring, and I really appreciate you coming on and sharing with our wonderful audience, guys. Till next time, go find Zach on LinkedIn or Let Me Die Learning on Instagram. Go check out his books on Amazon. And till next time, guys, y'all be safe.
If you've enjoyed this episode, be sure to give it a like, share it with the fellers, check out our website to send us any questions and comments about your experience in the blue-collar business. Who do you want to hear from? Send them our way, and we'll do our best to answer any questions you may have. Till next time, guys.